Hey everybody, Travis Pfeiffer here, bringing you another Deck Tech Talk. I wanted to bring you a deck that was... I've had this deck built for a while now, but I kind of revamped it recently based on some new Opus XII cards. In particular, one Opus XII card, and that is Mr. Baralai here. So Baralai, if you don't know, he's a 3 CP, 7k forward, and then he has 2 effects based on his Wind and Ice multi-element. So when a backup you control reactivates, you do 3,000 damage to the opponent's board. And then if you make your opponent discard through an ability or summon, you get to choose a character and dull freeze it. Crazy, crazy strong card on its own, and it's great when it's supported. So something I'd always run, basically since I got into the game, is Snowcobos, Chocobos with the backup snow. And Baralai just seemed to fit right in there. So I readjusted it a little bit based on my original version, but the idea is that, you want to get as many Baralai triggers as possible. The more you get, the more you're basically just going to win the game. He's insane. And we'll go over some of the combos, the things that help enable him. So, backing him up is 2 copies of the new Riku. She's great because she's Ice Wind just like Baralai, so she can be discarded for either element, which is great. And then when she enters the field, you can either dull a character your opponent controls. Actually, it's just a character, so if for some reason you needed to dull your own character, you could do that. I don't see why you would, or you can choose 2 characters and activate them. So she can either just be played straight for free, you just can reactivate the 2 backups that you used to play her, or I've actually used this against opponents who are playing an ice deck of their own, and so, they'll freeze my forwards or whatever, she'll come in and just bring the forwards back up. So she's great, and she's a really cheap way to cast our other big Icewind character, which is Locke. Locke gets 2 CP cheaper for every card that has been cast that turn, and then that counts characters being played, summons, just as long as you paid a CP cost for it. So she's a great way to get Locke in, and then Locke himself is just such a beater. He can break a 6 CP forward or more, break a monster. Honestly, I don't really use those too much. The most common thing you're going to do is make your opponent discard, and then dull freeze 2 of the characters, which in itself is insanely strong. However, if Baralai is on the field, when you do that, you're going to trigger his discard effect. So I remember I was testing this with my girlfriend once, and she had Baralai on the field, she brings down Locke, and so it ended up being dull freeze 3 of my characters and then discard a card, which is just so gross. Yeah, so I think 2 of my forwards went down and 1 of my backups went down. It's just so disgusting. I mean, again, all 3 of these guys are just kind of solid on their own, but the way they even feed into each other, help each other, is just fantastic. Again, Riku comes down, he's on the field, hey, that's a quick 3k board ping. So, that's kind of the main new part of the deck that we're really building around. So, it wouldn't be Snowcobos without some, Okobos, or Chocobos, if you will. So, we're playing 3 copies of this Hasty Chocobo. Of all the Chocobos, he's just one of the most solid. Having a card that can immediately come in with haste feels great. If he party attacks, he gives everyone in the party plus 3,000, so you're just going to get him to absurd proportions, which is excellent. Yeah, and just having a hasty forward, never a bad thing. We've also got 3 copies of that Chocobo. While he does not have haste on his own, he can grant any other forward in the game haste. So, let's say you put Baralai down or Locke down, and it's great because, even if you don't have him, but you've got one other forward, you've got another forward to play, I wish he could go in this turn, boom, that Chocobo lets him go in. Just always helpful. 2 copies of our Chocobo friend from Opus XI. He is great as a blocker, because when he dies and goes to the break zone, you can search for a job Chocobo or card name Chocobo, add it to your hand, which is every single Chocobo that exists in the game, and definitely in this deck. So that's great that he goes down. You can pull out any of your Chocobos. You can pull out a couple of backups you'll see, which is great. So he's one you definitely don't mind just putting down, leaving him up. You're happy to chump block with him. If you can trade with a forward, even all the better. If you can trade, 100% block with this guy. But again, even if you can't trade, just block with him. He's great. Here we've got our tanky Chocobo. He's really beefy. He has the largest natural power of any of the Chocobos we're playing in this deck. And then he also has the effect that when he forms a party, he does not receive any damage. For the most part, that doesn't overly come up a whole lot, but it can be used with some of the smaller Chocobos. Let's say you party him with him, then if they block it, you know, and they have to kill this one because he can't receive any damage. So, you know, now you're forcing them to take out the one that's going to get you an advantage card back. So while that hasn't come into play a whole lot over my lifetime of using Chocobos, like, it still can be relevant, and if you're smart about it and you think about it. Then we've also got, put him over here, 2 copies of what we refer to as Fluffy Chocobo. He's basically similar to the Hasty one, except that he doesn't have haste, but he has the same effect, so when he parties up, the whole party gets plus 3,000, each forward gets plus 3,000, and then he's just a bigger body, which is nice, so he can be good, again, when you're doing those party attacks. Party attacks are pretty relevant in this deck, as I'll explain later, so then you'll just get these big forwards with these big parties, and it's great. And again, partying him with someone tiny, you'll see this next one. Then next one, like our little friend Social Bow here, as we like to refer to him as, you know, suddenly he's going to get plus 3,000. Now him on his own is 6, the whole party's 13, 15, whatever. It's great. Social Bow is awesome. So when Social Bow enters the field, you may play 1 card named Chocobo from your hand onto the field. So he's basically just this entry trigger that he's going to come in and he's going to bring in a friend. Sometimes if you have multiple, you can plop down a Social Bow into a Social Bow and then bring out, you know, your Hasty or your big guy or whatever. Yeah, he's just this big old party friend. He loves to have people around. So yeah, that's why we call him the Social Bow. But he's great. He's just a great way to, you know, get a bunch of forwards on your board really quickly. If he brings out, you know, this one, then this one can go in right away. Feels fantastic. 1 copy of Azana. Azana, when he enters the field, he can also search out any card name or job name Chocobo. So same as when this one dies, he can just grab any of the Chocobos in this deck. More engine ramping, more just search power, great. And he's a solid 5k on his own. But yeah, he's great. He's unique. He does what he does. And then similar to Azana, here we have Chocobo Knight. He does the exact same thing. When he comes into play, searches a card name or job name Chocobo. Are you sensing a theme here? Yeah, they all kind of do that. Now, what's unique about him, you can kind of go back and forth on which one of these you prefer, because like you could easily do 2 Azana and just 1 Chocobo Knight. What I like about Chocobo Knight more is, 1, he is a standard unit, he's multi-playable. So even if you've got 1 on the field, you can put the other copy down, whereas Azana is unique. 2, yes, they both have the same search effect. He can tap himself to play a job Chocobo or card name Chocobo of cost 4 or less from your hand onto the field. So, with the exception of the backup Fat Chocobo that you'll see later, he can play any other Chocobo for free, which is great, because he doesn't have a ton of power, so for the most part, you're not going to want to be attacking with him anyway, but, you know, you tap him, bring in a Social Bow, boom, Social Bow brings in the big guy. It just feels great. It's one of those forwards that your opponent is probably going to try to take some kind of measure to remove, because even though he's not really a threat on his own, just the fact that he's just going to continuously bring you in free value every turn is just fantastic. Now, the only crummy part is that none of these feed into Locke's trigger. I wish they did. If this fed into Locke's trigger, as did him, like, I'd probably bump this up to 3, and it would just be out of this world. But you have to pay a CP cost for whatever to reduce Locke's cost. So, unfortunately, they don't feed into that, but it's still very good nonetheless. We have 2 copies of Black Waltz 3. He's in here for ice CP, because we have to balance out how much ice is in here versus how much wind, so you can cast it. And then again, similar to our Chocobo friend up here, he's just a great blocker. You know, when he dies and goes to the break zone, you can choose a dull forward and deal at 7k. So if you block someone with him and they dull, you know, and then he blocks, he'll deal 3k, and then you can deal another 7k, so he can basically trade up to a 10k, which is really nice. And then he can also get an ice summon back from the break zone, back to your hand. There's only 1 ice summon in here, so that's not overly relevant, but his main thing you'll probably want to do, especially if Baralai is on the field, is you can make your opponent discard a card. So if Baralai is on the field, you block an attack with Black Waltz, they have to discard, Baralai will trigger, now they got to dull freeze a character, you know, you'll choose that. So that feels really good, to stop an attack and get a discard and a dull freeze, all for the price of 2 CP, so yeah, he feels great. So the 1 ice summon that we do have, that he can get back, is 3 copies of Glaciolabilus. To this day, I still think this is just my favorite ice summon. There's the foil on top, and I'll go ahead and put the full art right here on top. He's just very versatile. He's versatile. He feels like he's costed well. He's a great combat trick during your opponent's turn. You know, he can discard, he can dull forward, he can freeze a forward, he can deal 7k to a dull forward. So he's just super versatile. Again, with Baralai on the field, it feels great to freeze a forward with Glacia, make him discard. Now Baralai is going to trigger. You're going to have to dull freeze something else. So he's just another way to feed that engine, which feels great. Next, we have, let's see, one copy of Diabolos. Diabolos is Diabolos. If you don't know about this card, you definitely should. I mean, he's, again, probably the best win summon there is. He can reactivate all your forwards. He can reactivate all your backups. That's going to trigger Baralai. He can break a 5 cost or more. Set a 4k to 1k, which then if you can then Baralai trigger with the reactivation, boom, it's going to instantly kill it. Yeah, I mean, Diabolos is never a bad card. He's freaking fantastic. He's great. Next, we have one copy of Unsaganashi. One of the best monsters in the game, probably the best wins monster hands down. It's just protection for your board. If you really want to keep your Locke alive, or really for Baralai more than anyone else probably, you can just pop the Unsaganashi, make them waste the choosing trigger, and then at damage 5 he just becomes insane because you can freely swing out because he's going to reactivate your entire board. So just fantastic monster. Fantastic. So next, finally, we have 3 copies of Chocomog. Chocomog is a 1 CP summon, which is an EX burst, and then he can search out a Job Chocobo or Job Moogle and add it to your hand. Now it's very important, it says Job. All of these Chocobos are standard units, so he cannot actually search out any of these forwards. So you might think, oh, well, what good is that? He can't search out any forwards? So what can he search out? Well, I'm about to show you. So next we have 3 copies of 5 CP Legend Fat Chocobo. This card is great. It's really easy to underestimate this card. What he does is when he enters the field, you search out a 3-cost Chocobo, Chocobo cost 3 or less, and you play it to the field immediately, which is great. So he can search out any of these forwards, and they instantly come to the field. You get this thing early, or like let's say you've got 1 backup down, turn 2, you tap him, pitch 2, put this guy out. Now you've got another backup. Boom, you can bring out Hasty Bow. He runs right in. You got Hasty Bow in hand. You pull down Social Bow. He brings in Hasty Bow. Boom, you've now got 2 guys on the field. He's fantastic. And it's really easy to overlook his second effect, which is you can tap him and choose a Job Chocobo or card name Chocobo, and you pump it by 2,000 power. I'll go into that a little bit, how useful that is. Someone else he can also pull, brand new to Opus 12, is this. 3 copies of Chocolate. She is a Job Chocobo, so your Fat Chocobo can search her directly out of the deck and play it onto the field. They always say searching backups is a great thing. Well, this is a backup that not only searches a backup, plays it immediately to the field. And then for Chocolate herself, she's really cheap. You can tap her to put an item counter on her, and then you can pay 2 of those item counters. You tap her and then get rid of 2 of those item counters, and it lets you draw a card. It's really great if you have floating CP at the end of a turn. You wait till your opponent's turn, you got nothing else to do with it, tap her, put an item counter on her. She's fantastic, and the fact that she can be pulled right to the field with this guy is even better. And then to just kind of add to this entire combo is our buddy No-No here. It's so funny to see this card kind of explode in Opus 12, because I've been using this card since I started playing the game, which was right at the end of Opus 7. No-No just says when anytime a forward you control attacks, choose a backup you control and activate it. This has so many effects. With Chocolate, you can put an item counter on her, declare an attack. She's going to reactivate. You tap her again, get the another item counter. And the big thing is, it's going to trigger Baralai. So if Baralai's on the field with No-No, anytime any forward you control attacks, you're doing a 3k ping to your opponent's board. You party attack with 2 people, boom, because of the way the stack works, you stack it individually, so you'll go No-No trigger, Baralai resolve, No-No trigger, Baralai resolve. So just by declaring a party attack, you've now done 6k to your opponent's board. I've party attacked with 3 people before to just 9k wipe my opponent's board out. Feels fantastic. And the interactions he has with Fat Chocobo are also incredible, because I have done this plenty of times before where, like, let's say I'll take the little hasty guy, but he's attacking on his own. You pump him by 2, he's now 6, he attacks, No-No reactivates this guy, So now he's threatening to pump again, so he's going to put him all the way up to an 8k just by himself, not to mention Baralai pings if you've got that. And if you party attack too, because of the way the stack works, you can super hit this guy. You can say, okay, let's say Snowcobo and this Chocobo party attack together for 8. Before they attack, Fatty, bump him up by 2, they're both 5. No-No's going to trigger once, reactivate Fatty. Fatty again, pump him up by another 2, he's 7. No-No's going to trigger the second time for the second forward. Fatty again, pump him up, he's now 7. Suddenly these two guys have a 14,000 power party attack. The amount of combos and things you can do with it are insane. He's never a bad one to leave up on your opponent's turn, because again then, let's say they try to wipe this Chocobo out, hit it with a 7k nuke or whatever, boom, bump him by 2, now he's safe. I can't tell you just how great that card is. We have 3 copies of the Class 9th Moogle. It's more ICP for us, and then he's just great because he taps for win CP, so he's just going to help color fix you. And all 4 of these backups are searched out by Chocomog. So I can't tell you how good that feels to have a summon that's only a single CP that can be hit into EX burst and lets you search out 4 of your backups. 4 of them. There's only a single backup in this deck that this can't search. The Chocomog searches 4 out of 5 of them of your unique backups. That's fantastic. And again, even if you've already got all 4 out, okay, you just search it out. It's just card fodder for you now. So last, but certainly not least, the one person that can't search out is Snow. Snow also has an effect when a forward attacks, which says when a forward you control attacks, you choose a forward opponent controls, dull it. So anyone who's played against Snow knows just how oppressive he can be and just how much of a pain he is, that you basically can't have blockers against him because he's going to dull their board. You party attack with people, that's 2 triggers of Snow, so boom, boom, he's going to dull 2 of their guys. You got Baralai in the field, you can dull 2 people, now you've pinged for 6k total, assuming you have No-No out. Just feels fantastic. And what's great about Snow too is that Snow makes it so that you don't have to rely on Baralai, because without Snow, Baralai would be such a core part of this deck, when in reality he just helps kind of augment a whole other part of it. But Snow is such a threat on his own. It's like, oh, Baralai is not out, no biggie, I'll just dull you out of the way anyway. This little guy is going to get over your 9k because your 9k is going dull when he attacks. Feels fantastic. I've actually had a lot of success. You'll notice there's only 5 unique backups. So yes, there are a few times you might get a little backup locked, or in the sense that you're going to keep seeing the same ones, but at least in my experience of playing it, there's also a consistency there of that. It's not like, oh, well, I really want to get down these 3 backups, but I drew these 5 first, so I put them down first, so I couldn't play the one I really wanted. You're always going to get down the ones you want, and with Chocomog to search it out, it just makes it very consistent, very easy. So those are a lot of the lines and tricks you can do with the deck. It's really fun. Can feel very aggressive, and it has comeback potential. That was always what I hated with the original version of this, was that it had no comeback potential. If it got behind, it was just really hard for it to catch up. And now, it had no removal, I guess I should say, was that, you could dull guys, but their board would just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just didn't have a good way to hold those people down. So again, it did make it very hard to come back. Or, yeah, if you were behind, Baralai really helps fix that. Some tech options. I did try Asura. She's great because 1 CP, you can reactivate your backups, and, it's a really cheap Baralai effect, lets you draw back a 2-cost character. That's not terrible, but ultimately I feel like Diabolos does the same thing, and Diabolos just does other stuff that's great. And so yeah, and the other thing too about this deck, just be warned, this is kind of a push-heavy deck. You want to be pushing. You don't have to be you don't want to crap out, Chocobo. You're not trying to haste someone down in 3 turns. You do want to get set up, because the more you're set up, the more power you have with these backups and their reactivation shenanigans and yada yada yada. And again, if you've got Baralai and you can drop them for that turn, unless they have an instant answer, you're wiping their board. However, be aware, Chocomog is the only EX burst in this deck. There's only 3 of them, and it's that guy. So you're definitely not also going to want to take a lot of damage, because there's nothing in the burst zone that's going to help you with that. Anyway, that's my brand new version of Snowcobos. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any suggestions or ideas. There are plenty of Chocobos out there to try, but I found these ones to kind of just be the strongest with what this deck wants to do. Hope you enjoy, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.